Hi. A brief overview of the Democratic Party of the last 60 years. Right around the time of JFK's assassination, he had issued an order to not only not increase the US presence in South Vietnam, but to withdraw all current advisors by the end of the year, December 31st, 1963. He didn't want further escalation of the war. Furthermore, he had passed a new law for a silver-backed dollar, a new treasury note. It wasn't preferable for, as Dwight D. Eisenhower had warned us about the military-industrial complex, JFK's approach to world governance, how the US was to act with foreign policy, and his emphasis on peace was obviously not popular. And I think now, 60 years later, most of the country is pretty on board that there was more than one shooter. I won't get into that any further, but the war, as LBJ did take office, Johnson did significantly escalate the Vietnam War to the height of the war was over 500,000 troops in 1968. Over 55,000 soldiers, American soldiers, died. And of course, LBJ's famous speech in March 68 that he would not accept the nomination of the Democratic Party for a second term. And in August 68, at the Chicago Convention, there were shocking riots, significant riots and police crackdown. And we had a little bit of a reenactment of that this year, the Chicago Convention, that of course there were protests against what's going on in Israel-Palestine. Still the same war machine, the Democratic Party. So Democrats like to feel they're the good guys, they're the peace party. Well, they actually have a history of being the war party. And then it was Nixon that wound down the Vietnam War and passed the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act. Sometimes there are just events going in history that whoever is president, there's stronger forces at work that they're going to have to move with, like making peace or caring about the environment. Sometimes the president just reflects the essence of the moment, the zeitgeist of what the public demands. So I will really fast forward, I'll jump over Carter and make a point about the Clinton administration. So again, with NAFTA, this was the beginning of a closer to home globalization and offshoring and outsourcing. And many Democrats felt betrayed, and union workers felt betrayed by jobs being traded away. Another important law that was passed or reform under the Clinton administration was reforming welfare. Clinton's term was triangulation. So women with young children were cut off AFDC, aid to families with dependent children, when the child turned 2. And it actually put many women in a terrible position of distress and their children distressed. Actually, Moore, I forget his name, Moore, one of his documentaries addressed the fact of these women leaving children under 5 at home alone to work because they had been cut off AFDC by Mr. Clinton. Thank you very much. And also there was the war that the Americans and NATO intervened in Serbia, Croatia, Herzegovina, the former Yugoslavia. So the Democrats aren't the peaceniks. And then also in 2003, before the onset of the Iraq War, we all remember Hillary Clinton voted for it, and there was practically no Democratic resistance in Congress at all, the House or Senate, to hold back from the war. The emphasis had been, the media of course was all behind it too, and there were significant protests from one end of this country to the other to prevent the US from invading Iraq. And it simply wasn't covered in the mainstream media. But of course, these days with social media, if there are protests or discontent, it is covered and known. And again, there were, under the George W. Bush administration, a couple of hundred drone strikes. So, and at the end of the George W. Bush administration, they had already wound down the Iraq War before Barack Obama came into office. So, and we know President Obama did then continue and extend the war in Afghanistan, and also increased drone strikes to over 2,000 annually. And President Obama deported more, I'll use the word at the time, illegal aliens from the United States than President George W. Bush or Trump had. So there's all kinds of contradictions and with the Democrats, that when they're in power, oh, they're the good guys and you can't criticize them and we're not supposed to notice. I just thought of nuclear power as another aside, which is being ramped up now from 2002. There have been many increases in permits for that, and now they're talking about small modular units. That's another conversation. But just that the Democrats make us like to feel good that we're doing everything right, while the lobbyists in DC continue business as usual. If it's military contracts or pharmaceutical permissions, which we've been going through the last couple of years. And one of the main things that, again, I'll speak of Democrat friends, they're traumatized, and their children traumatized by up to 2 years of school closures. Now, here in Arizona, we had many schools that stayed open, and the charter schools stayed open. And California now has $1 billion tax bill from a lawsuit to give children extra learning time for the 1 to 2 years learning loss during the pandemic. Rightfully so. And mostly lower income children, and rightfully so, they deserve that. But the tax bill on Americans for the catch-up remedial education should actually be given to Pfizer and Moderna. So, no, the Democrats aren't pristine. And if Americans, either libertarians, Greens, or those that choose not to vote at all, or Republicans, if they, the conclusions they come to, they have the right to vote as their intelligence, their logic, their heart and mind and intuition tells them. So, peace out.